Okay, let's now start with that big story that we are now tracking. The government of India said today in Parliament that it has no proof that the 39 Indians allegedly in ISIS captivity in Iraq are dead. It also says it has no proof that they are alive either. 6 months after using all diplomatic channels to bring back the Indian hostages to safety, clearly the government is struggling for answers. And to make matters worse, there are fresh claims that all Indians held in captivity have been executed. Here's our prime story tonight on the News Today at 9.
ਉਹਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਨਾ ਭਾਜੀ ਪਾਸਪੋਰਟ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਆਪਣਾ ਉਹ ਹੈਗਾ ਵਾ ਕੋਈ ਮਮੈਲ ਮਮੂਲੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੈਗਾ
ਸੁਰੱਖਿਅਤ ਹੋਣ ਬੱਚੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਉਣ
39 missing Indians held hostage by the dreaded ISIS. But 180 days after Modi Sarkar got to know. But the government refuses to go with Indian worker Harjeet's version. The location of this mystery character is not known. He last spoke to his family in August. The embassy officials claim he is not in their custody. But two Bangladeshi nationals who were with him say he informed the embassy about the killings. But the rising uncertainty has the families worried and caught in an unending search for answers.
ਅਸੀਂ ਇੰਨੀ ਵਾਰ ਗੁਹਾਰ ਲਾਈ ਆ ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਢਾਓ ਸਾਡੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਲਿਆਓ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਧਰੋਂ ਨਰਸਾਂ ਆ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ 40 ਤੇ ਕੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਨਹੀਂ
But did centre mislead the families and everyone else about the situation? Has the Modi government punched in a tight corner? Bureau Report, Headlines Today.
Okay, let me raise my first big question then on the News Today at 9. 39 Indians are missing in Iraq. Has the government simply forgotten about them? That's the question I want to raise. Joining me now, Naresh Gujral of the Akali Dal. Remember, most of the hostages are from the Punjab. KC Singh, former Secretary MEA who served as an ambassador in the Gulf. And also joining me, CR Keswan, spokesperson of the Congress. Appreciate all of you joining us. I want to come to you, Naresh Gujral, first. Let's be clear, and I want to be as direct as possible. If these 39 hostages were not poor laborers, would you concede that the government would have done much more to get them back? The fact is, the poor do not have a voice, particularly the poor who work as laborers in the Gulf.
I don't agree with you at all, Rajdeep. The government is doing its utmost. Our Chief Minister has met Mrs. Sushma Swaraj more than half a dozen times. I've been to her more than half a dozen times, 3 or 4 times with the families. We know and we can see how concerned she is and how much the government is doing to somehow get some kind of information about their welfare. So I don't agree that they're forgotten. The Punjab government has not forgotten them. We are providing their families monetary help every month. We are trying to give them every kind of support that we can offer. So to say that just because they're poor and they're forgotten, I don't agree with that kind of thing at all.
You're not going to accept that there has been a shroud of secrecy till that story came out yesterday on ABP News and a witness said that they had been that he believed they had been killed. There's been a complete shroud of secrecy over what has happened to these hostages, and it's now almost 6 months.
The External Affairs Minister clarified in the Rajya Sabha today that only one person says that they were killed, whereas she has information from 5 or 6 other sources that they are alive, including the Red Cross in Iraq. Now,
you're not giving false assurances. These are not false assurances, Mr. Gujral.
Well, look, I can only go by what the External Affairs Minister says, and I see no reason why she should be misleading Parliament.
Okay. Can I then come to you, Mr. C.R. Keswan, because the Congress, on the other hand, has again tried to make this an issue, saying the government has forgotten about these hostages. Let's be clear. It's a difficult situation dealing with ISIS in the Gulf. It isn't an easy situation. Would you concede that the Congress at a time like this needs to stand on the same footing as the government rather than try and score political points?
Rajdeep, there is no doubt that this is a national issue. This is beyond politics, and all Indians, all of us want these 39 hostages to be brought well and alive back home. But the issue is, like you said, the shroud of secrecy of the government is utterly confounding. It's been 6 months. For the first 2 months you can say I'm gathering information. After 6 months, this government is utterly helpless and clueless. Please look at the statement of what the foreign minister said today. She is talking about different sources. At the end of it, she says, I quote, there is no solid proof of either they being alive nor being killed. What kind of a Trishanku stand is this? Today, you should have reassured the families and all the people in the country that, and given them some solace, but you have compounded and further their anxiety today. Let me ask you one question.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, because, I want to for a moment come to KC Singh as the professional diplomat. While Mr. Keswan says, why is there so much of secrecy? And that's the question many of us are raising. Do you believe, KC Singh, it is difficult in a situation that exists today in Iraq to have any clarity on the fate of hostages? Or do you believe my initial question that the government of India hasn't done enough to bring them back? Or we have simply no clout left in that region to bring them back?
Look, as a broad remark, I think Prime Minister has been proactive, he is hands-on, but it's been largely look-east. The Islamic world, they haven't touched, you don't see much activity there. They haven't had any major movement, meeting people, etc., even on the sidelines of UNGA. Now, this is an old BJP blind spot. And, this needs to be rectified urgently. Now, Mrs. Swaraj saying for the first 1 month or 2 months that they're gathering information and secrecy was vital, you could imagine they were mounting some operation. But this can't go on for 6 months. And thirdly, ISIS are not chary at all of releasing pictures or telling you if they killed someone. They gloat over it. But let me also say that my own, whatever I've talked to one influential Gulf ambassador in Delhi, who should know about it, he was telling me a month ago that their information was that they may be released soon. So now there is no harm sharing information. You don't need to name the country.
So you're again saying the information should be shared. Can I just take that one point which you raised?
Without naming the country, certainly you can
just hold on. Can I just take the first point that you raised to Naresh Gujral? There's a feeling, Mr. Gujral, that Narendra Modi goes to America, he goes to Australia, he's looking east, goes to Japan. But what about the Gulf? I come back to it. Not a single statement has come from the Prime Minister of the country on this issue. Not a single statement has come about the fate of the hostages from the Prime Minister of this country. This is a Prime Minister who doesn't hesitate to speak on every issue. But he has maintained a stoic silence on the issue of the hostages.
Look, when a senior leader like Mrs. Sushma Swaraj, who is the External Affairs Minister, speaks, she speaks for the government. The Prime Minister does not have to speak on every issue.
The Prime Minister speaks on every other external affairs issue. The point which is KC Singh is making, the Gulf seems to be a dark area. This is where we are facing the real threat of ISIS and of terror.
Are you suggesting that when the External Affairs Minister speaks, she does not speak for the government?
I am only asking you, sir, 6 months I haven't heard a word from the Prime Minister on the situation in the Gulf, particularly with respect to Indian hostages being held there.
Well, I can't speak for the Prime Minister.
Yes.
But as a Member of Parliament from Punjab and as somebody who represents the Shirmani Akali Dal, I would say that we are quite satisfied with the efforts that are being made by the government to seek the release of these prisoners.
Okay. I want to raise this question and broaden it to the fate of those who are, let me say, as I said at the start, poorer Indians. We've seen that when it comes to hostages who've been taken by Somalian pirates in the past, Mr. Keswan, your government was in power. I know many of them came and met us in the television studio saying the government is not really doing enough for them. Let's be clear, the poorer Indians, whether it is the Congress or the BJP, Rajdeep, overseas do not get the same respect or the same space that the richer Indians get.
Rajdeep, Mr. K.C. Singh is a senior diplomat. He'll concur when I say this. In 2004, you please remember the 3 truck drivers where the same fate befell them in 2004, and the UPA government retrieved them, got them back within 42 days. It was a difficult time for the government. So please don't say that, I think we should not look at it in such parochial, perspective. But, let me say this.
No, I'm not looking at parochial. I'm saying there's a class issue. I'm saying there's a class issue. If these were rich Indians, if they were rich Indians, the government of the day, whether Congress or BJP, would go out of their way to rescue them.
The UPA government headed by the Congress party went out of its way to ensure that the 3 truck drivers in Iraq were brought back safely. So that shows our commitment. But let me ask you one thing. The problem here is we are not asking, the nation is not asking whether, please reveal your strategy or how you go about it. Please don't keep this nation in the dark. This was a party who said that, we'll be the chowkidar of this country. But you have a stoic and deafening silence when it comes to these people. Why doesn't the Prime Minister, who addresses various parliaments across the world, come to the Indian Parliament and please come clean on this issue and assure the Indians?
Okay, K.C. Singh, we've got the government saying today that 2 middle-level officers have been trying to retrieve the situation. They are parked there in Iraq. Is it quite simply a fact that we no longer have the clout in that country that we once did? There was a time when India was a country which had considerable clout in Iraq.
Rajdeep, clout has to be generated. Middle-level officers are not going to generate it. I sent terrorists back from UAE, but you have to have links at the higher level. You have to have your government backing you, and you have to have the government doing certain things. Now, the question is, you need a special envoy or someone. They are just not reaching out to these countries. Are we talking to Turkey? Have we talked to the Kurds? Today, the Americans have eyes in the skies there. I was just reading yesterday a report. They are saying that they are complete intelligence analysis of every car that is moving. Only things they are not hitting are tankers because they don't want to kill drivers. But any new construction taking place, any checkpoint, they are targeting. They got a whole targeting information for, are we talking, have we discussed this with the Americans? Are the Americans helping us? Prime Minister met the Israeli Prime Minister. Israelis have tremendous assets there. No, it should be visible that you have a minister who's gone and talked. We are not saying share the strategy. I can spell out a strategy for you which doesn't spill the beans but shows the country and shows ISIS that there'll be retribution. If you touch my citizens, I will come and give military help to Kurds. I will come and weigh myself against you. If you're a major power, that is the way you behave. But that's a blind spot for BJP. They don't pay attention to that part of the world.
No, you
fly
keep
over
saying,
it,
you keep
west
saying
for
a
you means
blind,
US.
You keep saying, sir, a blind spot. I'm raising the other issue where we saw it with the Somalian pirates. Hostages remained there for years.
Yeah.
Is it simply the fact that even our Ministry of External Affairs, even diplomats, somehow do not reach out to poorer Indians in the manner that they do to richer Indians?
No, Rajdeep, in the Gulf we've done it. Somalia, maybe there were problems because there was no government. There was zero government. But ISIS is entirely different. It is a malevolent force. We should be seen as confronting it. We are weak-kneed. No, they will kill our citizens. What if they've already killed them? They will kill some more. So, it's a question of Americans have refused to negotiate with them. They have beheaded their people. But here is a nation which stood up. They said, we'll come after you. Now, you use an excuse, I have to keep it secret. Now, what that secret is, we don't know. But you are not seen as really meeting. We sent to who's going to be meeting the middle-level officers? And today it was pathetic for Mrs. Swaraj to say, we are asking Mr. E. Ahmed. What will Mr. E. Ahmed do about it? I've dealt with him. He was a Minister of State in the ministry. He has certain contacts, but no more than that. This has to be done at a much higher level, where you get in touch with the ruling families, you tell them this is vital for me, and they will deliver.
Can I therefore ask you, Naresh Gujral, in conclusion, are you confident that the hostages will return? Are you hopeful that the hostages will return? Or is the country not being told the full truth of what is the fate of these hostages? Because that might embarrass you and your government.
Rajdeep, I am convinced that the External Affairs Minister is telling the country the truth. And I have no reason to disbelieve what she is saying. And she is quite confident that our hostages are alive. Don't forget, they're in the war zone. So it's not as easy as it's made out to be by other people today on the panel. But let me tell you one thing, that in Rajya Sabha at least, all Congress leaders were appreciative of what the government was doing, and they agreed with the strategy that the government was following.
Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. We're going to keep tracking this story. Remember, as I keep saying, these are Indians perhaps who are falling off the map at the moment. KC Singh, Naresh Gujral, Mr. Kesavan, appreciate your joining us on the news today at 9. My take, where do I stand on this issue? The uncertain fate of 39 Indian hostages trapped in Iraq raises troubling questions for the Ministry of External Affairs. It would seem that the Indian government has limited clout in the war-torn, troubled region where ISIS holds sway. The hostages are poor laborers, and one is tempted to ask, would the efforts at rescuing them have been more proactive if they were not faceless Indians, poor Indians caught in a conflict zone? Okay, on that note, let me turn to the other big story. It's taken 32 hours for the Indian Army to flush out 4 militants from an abandoned army bunker in Arnia in Jammu, but not before collateral damage today to civilians and soldiers. What was found in the bunker has set off alarm bells. The militants preparing, it is believed, for a massacre in densely populated areas of Jammu region that go to the polls. Ashwini Kumar with this ground report tonight.
First shots of the day. Riddling all hope that the operation in Arnia was over. Meanwhile, more bad news. Another civilian dead, taking the toll to 5, even as 3 soldiers were martyred in the operation. Though armed with combat vehicles and helicopters, the army desisted from using heavy artillery to minimize collateral damage. And in the process, putting itself in the direct line of fire.
You can see the damage caused by the terrorist activities on the similar. Some of the bullets were fired. You can see these are the bullets, 4 or 5 bullets were fired on this area, and there is some damage, but no, the army is preparing for this. Is another area where the bullets were fired on the vehicles.
The operation ended nearly 32 hours after it began. With rocket-propelled grenades and other grenades recovered from the bunker the militants were holed up in. A suicide vest was also found, confirming fears that this was a Fedayeen mission the terrorists were on, and if they hadn't been stopped at the Pindikot village, they may have been headed to a populated area to extract maximum casualties. The terrorists reportedly slipped in across the international border on Thursday morning, then commandeered a vehicle by killing its occupants. The group, dressed in Pathani suits, changed into BSF uniforms to blend in. They were spotted by the army and took shelter in an abandoned bunker with enough fortification to stretch the sanitization operation.
The operation has so far been very successful. We have ensured that the operation remains a localized one and it doesn't spread. And it is the martyrdom of those 3 soldiers, those brave soldiers, which has resulted in the successful elimination of all these 4 terrorists.
The attack by Fedayeen elements began on a day when Indian and Pakistani Prime Ministers shook hands, continued on a day when Modi addressed a poll rally just 100 kilometers away. And though diplomacy may have gagged views, the security establishment is of the view that the brazen attack was more than just a coincidence. With Ashwini Kumar in Arnia sector, Jammu, Bureau Report, Headlines Today.
And joining me now for more on that, Shiv Arur, who tracks the Defence Ministry for us. Shiv, tell us at the end of the day, what is the final picture that is emerging in terms of casualties, in terms of what is the big takeaway for the Indian Army from this massive operation that has been launched?
It's been an extremely expensive operation, Rajdeep, as our report has just shown. 5 civilians dead, 3 army men killed, all of those terrorists hopefully killed, even though search operations, even as we bring our viewers this report, are still very much on. The areas surrounding Arnia and the Pindikot village are currently being, still being searched very thoroughly, just in case that initial terror group actually, managed to split into 2. But the implications of what may have actually been the primary mission of those terrorists is something that's that's going to trouble many people, both there on the ground and at the Unified Command headquarters in Srinagar, Rajdeep, because a suicide vest, is almost certain to have been on one of those terrorists. They found a mutilated, mostly charred body, one of the 3 terrorists who was killed on Thursday itself, leading investigators and the army to believe that he was wearing a suicide vest. They conjecture at this point, and this is official from the army, that they may have been heading towards a populated area, perhaps a political meeting of some kind, because they also found one of them to have been possessing a civilian dress of some kind. So it leaves it open to the imagination. We're still to get a final report, but the army officially says that this could have been a much larger game plan to infiltrate deeper into Jammu division, find a populated area and extract maximum casualties with a suicide attack.
Okay, Shiv Arur with that report. And as Shiv says, all this coming, of course, in the shadow of the elections that are taking place in Jammu and Kashmir. Thanks, Shiv, for joining us. Now, those elections, of course, are taking place in Jammu and in the valley.